Hey everybody, Bob Chick back with David Bayer, another installment of The Last Rep. And looks like the last rep this last week, David, was Vancouver.
Vancouver, yeah, always a good show. A lot of divisions. When we talk about the show lineups for 2017 and all the years, really, usually we see a handful of divisions there. But Vancouver is one of those shows where it's well represented. So we had bodybuilding, 212, classic, men's physique, fitness, figure, bikini, and women's physique. So that's just about everything. So no women's bodybuilding, but other than that, no wheelchair. But other than that, it was a full lineup. So a really good show. A cool show to be at. I wish I could have been back there again this year. It's right on the water in Vancouver where they dock all the cruise ships and stuff like that. So it's a really cool event. You can step outside the convention center and just beautiful views of the mountains and the water. There's restaurants on the water and stuff. So if you got to pick a show to go to and you've already been to the Arnold and the Olympia, Vancouver's a good one.
Like Otis Redding, my friend, you could have been sitting on the dock of the bay.
Where do you this stuff just brews in your head, doesn't it?
A plethora of useless information, bro. All right, well, listen, it was pretty much the same lineup as Chicago, so it wasn't really too much removed. Michael Lockett ends up in the winner's circle again. I can't say there was a real big surprise there. I would guess he would have been the favorite going in.
Yeah, no, after winning Chicago, he was definitely, I think, the favorite going in. But it was another one of these shows where you looked at the lineup, and really anybody could have won showing up in really, really good shape. So there was some good talent. You had Kevin Jordan, you had Eddie Bracamontes, you had Regan Grimes, some older guys like Josh Wade. You had Brandon Ray stepping back in after being away from the stage for a little while. So it was one of these shows where, yeah, you had a favorite, but there wasn't like this clear lights out winner. So it was a really good opportunity for people to step up and get their name out there or get their name back out there. And it just didn't seem like the guys that were there did that.
Yeah,
so Lockett gets another win. Obviously, great for him getting back-to-back wins, a few nice paydays. But it was a little bit lackluster, I want to say.
Now, I saw pics. Obviously, neither one of us were there, so we're going by pictures and video, obviously, that we've seen throughout the week. I got to be honest. There's one of two things or a combination of both. The lighting was either horrible and there was people not in as good a shape as they could have been in, or the lighting was as it should have been, normal, and absolutely nobody was in shape. I saw no pictures that anybody impressed me.
It definitely wasn't the most competitive show. And I don't even want to say competitive lineup because it was a good lineup. Just the most competitive show. I think everybody was a little bit off. Of course, Michael Lockett's never really off. But as we've had 1,000 discussions before, his physique isn't necessarily the most complete, even though he's got a freakiness factor to him. So I think it really opened the door for guys like Kevin Jordan and even maybe a Regan Grimes, or, like I said, there was a handful of guys that I don't think could have won. But, a guy like Brandon Ray, I think, could have won. A guy like Eddie Bracamontes, I think, could have won. And a lot of guys just didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And so we saw a lot of guys close that looked good, but nobody that really came out and established himself as a solid front runner. And so you kind of walked away with a little bit of the,
Right.
Yeah, okay, this is first, this is second. And obviously I'm really impressed by Regan Grimes, another top 5 finish. He moved all the way up to second place. I know some people weren't crazy about that, thought that Kevin Jordan and Josh Wade and Brandon Ray still outmuscled him enough to where they should have placed ahead of him. But it was, again, one of those situations where everybody kind of left the door open for everybody else. And it's hard to, if you do everything you can and you show up, just hard as nails on the money, and then you place a little bit lower than you would like to, then there's room for saying, hey, maybe I'm not the happiest with that. But if you show up a little bit off and somebody else shows up a little bit off and so does somebody else, everybody kind of has to look at themselves in the mirror and say, my placing was a direct result of me not bringing it, and I could have placed higher, but I didn't. And that was the case for
I would have thought Kevin Jordan, this would have been a good show for him to have kind of taken that top spot. And he's got enough physique that I think he could have beaten Lockett.
Absolutely.
But he was off, and he was notably off from Chicago. I thought he was better in Chicago than he clearly was in Vancouver.
Kevin, actually, I was just checking the phone before we started recording. He posted some pictures from Chicago and Vancouver, and in pictures he actually posted, he actually did look a little bit sharper in Vancouver, but that didn't really translate in the pictures that I saw online. And I absolutely agree that I think Kevin could have won. Kevin, like I said, Kevin's got a really good physique, and we've talked about his progress. He still needs to bring his quads up a little bit, but Kevin's got a physique that he can be winning shows, and he gets in good shape. Look, Kevin Jordan never comes to a show and you're like, oh wow, he's really off. He missed the mark. Kevin's always in shape.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time since we've seen him show up just really grainy hard. And as soon as he does that, first place finish.
Well, Josh Wade ends up in the third place spot. Good spot for him. Again, not a great physique, but a very good physique, and I think he does a lot with what he's got. Kevin Jordan, as we just mentioned, settles in that fourth spot. I think that easily could have been a first or second had he come in a little bit sharper.
I absolutely agree.
And that brings us to Brandon Ray. Now this is going to segue into a couple of good things for discussion. We haven't seen Brandon Ray in a while, and this was the first show. Kind of, we'll call it his comeback of sorts, I guess. Since he's been away from the stage. This was a show that he could have easily ended up in the winner's circle and been going to the Olympia.
Absolutely.
However, I saw nothing that impressed me on Brandon Ray. Now, I say that with the caveat that he has a very good physique. Put together very well, great body parts. Conditioning, man. I mean, he was just off. He was soft. His posing... again, not up to par with what it should be at the pro level. Fifth place in this show. I mean, that's way under what he should be doing.
Brandon Ray is a guy with so much potential. It's frustrating to see him get on stage in that kind of shape. He's almost, I don't want to compare him to a Lionel Bayaki. I don't think he's at Lionel's level or necessarily an Akeem Williams, but he's got such good structure and such potential that when you see him show up in that kind of shape, it becomes frustrating, as a media person and even just as a fan, because you know how good he could be if he showed up in shape. I don't know what he weighed. There's been so many discussions if he was ever really, really in shape, and we're talking just crazy shredded, he could probably make it down to the 212. I don't know what he weighed, but he definitely wasn't, he wasn't as sharp as he needed to be. And the fact that he showed up in the conditioning that he did and still got fifth place in a lineup with, some pretty decent guys just speaks volumes about how much potential he has, his structure and his muscularity. But he's another one of these guys where until he figures out how to just show up and really nail it as far as his conditioning goes, he's not going to be in that top spot. He's not going to be in that top three. And, realistically, with that level of conditioning, the reason he was in top five is because you had a handful of other guys that were off as well. So Brandon's got all the potential in the world, but he's got to nail it. And that's a discussion that we have about so many bodybuilders over and over and over again. But Brandon's he's one of the really good ones that if he ever showed up in shape, it would be interesting to see just how well he could do.
Now, our former colleague Sean Ray, obviously everybody knows Sean. Everybody knows he's got a very good eye when it comes to bodybuilding. Now, listen, you can love Sean, you can hate him. He's absolutely entitled to his opinion. He covers the sport. That's what he does, and he gives his expert opinion, and it is an expert opinion on what he sees. Now, he was very critical of Brandon Ray this past week, and I saw a response from Brandon Ray that I got to be honest, I kind of got a little chuckle out of. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it was a fairly lengthy response. But he took exception to the fact that Sean Ray did the critique that he did on him. And it wasn't a favorable one. It was much along the lines of what we're saying, probably a little bit harsher, but that's Sean's style. And he was critical about his conditioning, about how he showed up, and about his posing, actually, which is not good. I mean, it's not, I've seen mediocre posing, and it's very awkward. It's a little odd in some of the...
It doesn't look like he's really practicing it much. It's kind of like everybody's got to practice posing, even if you're really good. And Brandon looks like one of these guys where he just kind of, I've been bodybuilding for a long time. I know how to hit the poses, and he shows up and
not so much.
Some more. Yeah.
So, it looked amateurish, and Sean said some of the similar things to what I'm saying now. But Brandon put a response back out there that he basically took exception to this. Called Sean Ray irrelevant, and basically says, this little credo of, hey guys, and we work hard for this, and and we can do this, and with social media, and we can build our own brand, and blah blah blah. Now, I got to be honest, David. I mean, listen. First of all, you're a pro athlete. You better get used to be taking some critique, okay? I don't care whether it's Sean Ray or anybody else, okay? That's just part of the game. You got to have a little bit thicker skin, and not in the bodybuilding sense. When it comes to taking critique from somebody who is not only an expert in the field, but obviously Sean's resume speaks for itself. You're talking about a 12-time Olympian. Talking about a guy who arguably should have won the Olympia, not once, but probably twice, in my opinion. And he's a Hall of Famer, and he's got a very good eye when it comes to bodybuilding. Sean was not off in his comments. I mean, he was spot on. My question to you is what's with the new generation in taking constructive criticism to such a level that they feel like they've been disrespected? I mean, isn't this a little over the top?
I think and this goes back to the same discussion I had about Dallas McCarver. I think Sean's comments cut a lot deeper than most people's would because of the fact that he's Sean. And inherently, anybody who's bodybuilding today looked up to Sean at some point, whether you don't look up to him anymore because you think he's a jerk or whatever. Anybody that's competing on a stage today, I shouldn't say anybody, maybe anybody that's over 25 or so, looked up to Sean Ray when they were coming up. And to have somebody that you look up to or idolize in a lot of cases be that scathing with their remarks towards your physique, it can be very personal. And I think that's what you're seeing from these guys is, they want, regardless of whether they want to admit it or not, they want Sean Ray's approval. I looked up to Sean.
Sure.
Sean's a legend. I want his approval. My beef with what a lot of these guys are saying, and I love Dallas, and I've always gotten along with Brandon, so I don't have anything negative to say about him. But I always get a kick when people say Sean's irrelevant because people seem in bodybuilding, as soon as somebody retires or is retired for a couple of years, he's a has-been or he's irrelevant
right.
or he doesn't know what he's talking about. The biggest thing I get a kick out of is, like some of the old judges, Luke Testvich and Rope, and some of these guys were really good bodybuilders when they were younger, and you'll get guys who are like, oh, they're irrelevant. And it's funny because if you look at other sports, nobody's ever going to say because Terry Bradshaw can't throw the ball 60 yards anymore that he's irrelevant. Nobody says, oh, he's washed up. No, you're just retired and you're not in the sport anymore. So when people say Sean Ray is irrelevant or washed up or anything like that, it's an absolutely ridiculous statement. The guy was a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best ever, arguably the best small bodybuilder ever. And his comments are definitely relevant. And the only way you can make an argument that his comments weren't relevant is by saying, you know what, you weren't there in person, which he wasn't. But again, I think what it comes back to with how people handle Sean Ray's comments or compliments or criticisms is that they looked up to him, and so it burns a little bit more than it would from just some random person. But I've said this before. I've seen the flip side of this. I've seen guys at shows be like, screw Sean, I don't care. And then they'll show up at a show 2 months later, and Sean will be like, well, you know what? So-and-so looked good. And then they'll be backstage, oh, hey, man, I saw your comments. Thank you very much.
Right.
And so I think that's what it comes down to. And
let me tell you what I'm waiting for, okay? I'm waiting for a guy, because we've seen this 5, 6, 7 times already this year, to various degrees. The two most notable was Dallas, of course, and now Brandon. I'm waiting for the guy who gets Sean's comments, and they're not very good, and actually agrees with them, actually says, you know what, he's right, and I need to be better, and I need to work on this, or I need to work, and I'm going to do those things, and I'm going to basically prove him wrong next show. I want to see that guy. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that guy yet. All we've seen is a bunch of excuses, a bunch of ridiculous notions as to why they didn't place as well as they did or whatever. I haven't heard anybody, by the way, other than Sean Ray, disagree with his assessment. I haven't seen one expert come out and with a completely different view of what Brandon Ray looked like. And people are hard on Brandon Ray because, as you said at the top of the show, listen, the kid is very gifted. He's got a great physique. He can be winning these shows, and that's why Sean's critical of him.
And that's the thing. Look, guys, and this goes for Dallas. This goes for Brandon. If Sean thinks you suck, I've sat next to Sean for 4 years and did play-by-plays at countless shows.
Right.
If Sean thinks you suck, he says nothing about you. Not ready.
Correct.
If Sean doesn't think you're a good bodybuilder that has potential, you're not even worth his criticism. I remember the first couple times I was covering nationals, I'm like, oh God, what do I say when somebody looks this bad? Just say they're not ready for nationals and leave it at that. So when Sean is generally giving his critiques, usually it's because, hey, this is somebody who's got potential. This is somebody I could see definitely going somewhere, but I think they're screwing it up. I think with Dallas earlier on in the year, Sean, poked at the fire a little bit more than I think a lot of people were comfortable with. So I think that's kind of what led to that situation, especially considering Dallas had some health issues and he went after Dallas's coach. But as far as with Brandon, it was just comments about his physique. And so Brandon needs to be able to take those, assess his own contest prep and move forward and try to be better. because, like I said, Brandon could have won that show. Kevin Jordan could have won that show. There's a handful. Actually, I think I shouldn't say there's a handful of guys. I think there's a few. I think Eddie Bracamontes, Razor Sharp, could have won the show. He slipped pretty far down, but it's got to be. I shouldn't say it's got to be. I know it is. Obviously, just on my own level, showing up to a show and looking around at your competition and knowing that you didn't win when you could have, had you worked a little bit harder or paid a little bit more attention to some of the details with your prep.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Tampa's around the corner. It's 1, 2, 3 weeks away. Okay? I would love to see a Brandon Ray in there. Another 5 pounds down. Sharp, crisp. I don't think he's ever been shredded, so I'm not going to use that word. Nor do I think he needs to be
maybe
shredded.
As an amateur, I think he was his best conditioning as an amateur. I don't think
he wasn't shredded as an amacher. Okay, what got him through was his shape, his muscularity, and he's got, again, beautiful proportions. That can carry you a long way, much like Brandon Curry, who people often mistake these guys only because of their first names. But Brandon Curry got through a lot on his shape and beautiful physique. Obviously, conditioning was always his Achilles heel until this last show that we saw him when he made a noticeable improvement, and hopefully he can duplicate that at the Olympia. But Brandon Ray needs to follow the same suit. I mean, he needs to bring it down a notch. Again, I don't care whether he goes in a 212 or whether he goes in an open. He can't be much out of 212. If he is, he's
pretty short. So I don't know how much out of 212 he is, but I can't imagine that if he showed up just razor sharp, that he couldn't make it down into the 212 class.
Positive that he could. Maybe that's the direction he should look.
Yeah, I think that's a good fit for him. And
listen, this wasn't. Listen, let's keep things in perspective here, David. This was not the most stellar lineup we've seen. Okay, it was a good lineup. It wasn't anywhere near a great lineup. There wasn't really a top name in there as we consider top names, in the Class A type list. If you're barely breaking a top 5 here, I forget about it. And Tampa's probably not going to be any easier. I believe that may be the last chance saloon, is it not?
It is. Yeah, Tampa's the last chance to qualify, and Josh Lenardowitz is going to be there. So.
By the way, yeah. Speaking of which, and that'll
good
bring
luck
us
to everybody else.
Boy. For everybody that saw the recent pictures of Josh, he has taken. Most people know now he was supposed to compete earlier in the year. He had to pull out due to a couple different reasons, but he just said it wasn't, a good time, and he needed to take care of some biz. And basically, I'll be back, And I'll tell you what, you talk about putting your time in the gym. This kid looks like he's put on about 40 pounds.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of Josh. It's just shaking my head type stuff. I did see a picture. I don't know if it was a Throwback Thursday picture. But I did see a picture of last year's runner-up, Alexis Rivera-Rolón, and I don't want to be the spreader of fake news. So again, we're shooting this on a Thursday, so I don't know if it was a throwback, but there was a picture of Alexis, and he looked very close to show shape in show condition, and he could be a handful for anybody. But if Josh shows up on the money, he's going to be tough to beat. But we have a couple other guys in Vancouver. I don't want to get too far ahead without giving some props. Ricardo Correa came in, got another win. So your 212 and your open guys back to back from Chicago to Vancouver. I thought Ricardo looked great again, and you weren't kidding. This is a guy that can definitely push the top at the 212 Olympia. Great muscle bellies, a small waist. His conditioning is good. He can pose well. I've watched some of his stuff on social media. Not that personality should have any effect on placings, but he seems like a great guy. So a really good addition to the sport. Couple of the Korean guys, Kim Jun-ho got second, Nam Un-cho got fourth, Mark Dugdale third place.
All right,
that guy just keeps cranking. Yeah. He just keeps cranking. So it was good to see Mark in another top spot.
Absolutely. Mark's one of the good guys, man. You can't help but root for the guy.
Of course.
He's a great guy. He's got a great family. His little girls, who I still call little, are all college age now, which makes me feel extremely old. But I just can't get out of my head that they're little girls. I remember when they were 2, 3, 4 years old. But like I say, I can't wait to see Mark back on the Olympia stage. I don't know how many more years he's got in this game, but he loves the sport. He loves to compete. So good to see him back at the Olympia.
He's not. I'm not going to say he's getting better from year to year, but man, he's consistent. And Mark's one of these guys where every time I was at a show and Mark walked out, I was like, he looks really good, he looks sharp, but I don't know. And then you put him in a lineup and he just pops, and it's like, wow, Dugdale looks awesome. So you know how some guys look really good standing by themselves, and you put them in a lineup and they lose some ground. Mark's one of these guys where sometimes by himself you think, okay, maybe he's not going to compare so well. As soon as you get him in the lineup, Mark starts gaining a lot of ground. So it was good to see him in a third place spot. And like you said, I actually met Mark in 2005 when he guest posed at the Wisconsin State Championships. So I've known him since then, and a really nice guy. He's one of those guys where I really wish they would have had a 202 or a 212 when he turned pro, because if anybody remembers seeing Mark when he won the USAs in 2004, he was really something else when he came out of the NPC. But yeah, a couple other winners. We're just going to go over these real fast. Classic Physique, Rylon McDougall-Batiste, who actually – He messaged me this week on Instagram, and he's like, hey, and he screenshotted. It's kind of a cool feeling when I see this. People screenshot comments from our play-by-plays that we do, and they either save them because they hate us and they want to use it for motivation or whatever, or they use it as encouragement. And he won his pro card at Nationals. You know, when we do so many of these play-by-plays, I didn't recall him specifically, but he won his pro card at Nationals, and I had said some stuff like, wow, this guy's really impressive. He could get to the Olympia in his rookie year next year in 2017. Well, he sent me a screenshot. He's like, hey, bro, you called it. I'm on my way to the Olympia. Oh, nice. So that was men's physique. Anthony Saleza, guy, he won his pro card a week before at Team Universe. Now he's going to the Olympia. Wow. Fitness was interesting. Emma Pavely, a girl from over in Europe, won, but she beat Fiona Harris and Rael Graber. And for people who follow fitness, those are two top girls. So impressive there. Canadian girl, Martina Yabakova, won figure. Frida Paulson-Stern won bikini. And Jody Baum, another Canadian girl, winning women's physique. So congratulations to all the winners in Vancouver, and a lot of new names going to the Olympia. So
let me tell you a little shout out to Jody Baum. Now, for those who don't know, Jody Baum has always been a top fitness competitor. Fitness, not women's physique. So she decided to give women's physique a shot. Now, she is tiny, okay? Like when you talk about tiny girl, like none of the fitness girls are big, obviously. There's a reason they can do what they do. But she's one of the smaller ones of even them.
Whitney Jones is pretty big. Whitney Jones is
big compared to them. You know, I mean, she's 5'5", you know. But Jody Baum's, she's dinky, okay? But let me tell you something. Great physique, and what a great move, okay? Listen, she's always been in the mix in fitness, but I don't think she's ever been in the winner's circle. But she made a move and went to women's physique, and I'll be damned if she didn't win it, and she's going to the Olympia now. And the reason I put this out there is yet one of our many public service announcements to the many girls I talk to at a lot of these shows. And I try to direct some of them to physique from different divisions, from figure, some from fitness. Some of them have done very well. Those girls are big, they're big. No, they're not big. Danny Reardon is not big, okay?
Most people are very surprised when they see some of these women's physique girls up close. You know, a lot of them have delts that dive down into their upper arms. They got good quad sweeps, tiny waist, tiny joints. And so it's incredibly deceiving when you see some of these women's physique competitors that look really muscular. Juliana Malacarne is a great example. You see her on stage, like, wow, she's muscular. And then you go stand next to her, and she's just this little thing. Yeah. And even I remember when Dana Lynn Bailey was competing, oh my God, her shoulders and her arms are so huge. Like, no, they have great shape and there's great tie-ins which create the illusion. But Jody's she's a tiny little thing. I saw her in Toronto a couple of times and I was there covering that show, and good for her making a good transition.
Guess what? She'll be at the Olympia, so good for her. And you know what? I hope that inspires more girls to switch. And we've had some very successful ones that have come from different divisions. You know, we just had Mindy O'Brien, who just retired, switched obviously from fitness to women's physique, got to the Olympia stage, so she did great. And we've had others. Oddly enough, or not, I shouldn't say oddly enough, interestingly enough, we haven't had any successful women bodybuilders who have made the transition to women's physique. Now, that doesn't really shock me, but
Susan Smith, won bodybuilding at Nationals. She won the overall, the 2014 Nationals, came out at the Phoenix Europa, switched to women's physique, downsized just a little bit, and won her pro debut, made it to the Olympia. But Susan wasn't necessarily the biggest female bodybuilder at Nationals. She won on structure and shape and And
Correct.
so
Yeah.
I would say out of all the transitions, it would be Susan. But a lot of times what we see with the women bodybuilders when they transition to women's physique, they just look like a smaller bodybuilder version of themselves, if that makes sense. You know,
That's not what the judges are looking for.
Anna Freitas was a good example.
Yep.
She went from bodybuilding to women's physique. She just looked like she was a little bit smaller and probably not even any softer. She was still just super shredded.
Yeah.
And so, no, it takes not to take anything away from the structure of some of the top female bodybuilders, but to be successful in physique, you have to have better flow. You have to have better overall aesthetics. I think, if we look at the top girls in women's physique, I think maybe the top or in bodybuilding, I think maybe Margie Martin has a good enough structure where she could probably downsize and do well in women's physique. But I think the list of right now top female bodybuilders that could do well transitioning into women's physique, I think it's a short list.
Yeah, it's very short. But speaking of people on the short list, David, you mentioned classic physique earlier.
You're gonna get me all fired up here. I think we're gonna talk about,
because you've got a bone to pick, my friend. That you saw a little something from our good friend Lee Banks out there.
I got a bone to pick with Lee Banks, and let me start by saying that Lee has always been very cordial to me at shows, on social media, everywhere else. So I think Lee is genuinely a nice guy, and so I don't want to create like this tough. But Lee has really been bothering me lately on social media to the point where, and I don't know him well enough to where, because, sometimes when you call somebody out or something like that, I'm not calling him out. I'm just giving my opinion.
Right.
Sometimes people are like, well, bro, why didn't you call me? I'm not on a, Lee and I don't hang out on Sundays and have hot dogs and Kool-Aid. So this isn't a situation where, well, you should have called me if you were going to say something. Look, Lee Banks has a phenomenal physique. I think he's going to do very well at the Olympia this year. My beef with Lee Banks is he is blasting all over social media, all over the internet about his natural status. Okay? Now, I'd like to make it very clear that any competitor, whether you're an amateur, whether you're a pro, whatever, if you choose to be a natural competitor, good for you. Honestly, good for you. That's the choice you're making. Whatever direction somebody wants to go, whatever makes you happy, do what makes you happy. But here's my problem with Lee. You weren't natural for 10, 12, 15 years, okay? And so the physique that you have built that is bringing you to a competitive stage right now was not done naturally. Now, if you want to step away from stage for 5 or 7 years or come back and say, okay, now I'm all natural, fine. But you don't compete as a bodybuilder for 15 years or 10 years or whatever he's been doing, and then all of a sudden say, well, I need to lose 30 pounds of muscle anyway to get down to classic physique, and then go brag about being natural. I think it's, look, you look at his physique now, and nothing about his physique says all natural. It says you were a guy who was a bodybuilder that needed to lose weight to make weight for classic, and so you came off stuff so you would lose the amount of muscle you needed to lose to make classic physique. Okay, and he's putting all these posts on social media, above his head, super natural. It's like, come on, dude, enough. Really, and it's like I said, I'm dieting, so I'm a little bit more cranky than normal, maybe. But seriously, and I'm not the first person to bring this up at all. He's bothering a lot of people because it's not even the point where nobody's judging the fact that he's gone natural and that he's, but whatever. But you needed to lose the weight anyhow to compete in classic physique, so whatever. It was an easy decision for you. Well, I need to lose 30, 40 pounds of muscle. What do I do? Well, just go natural. Well, but he's trying to force feed it to everybody. I'm natural. I'm super natural. Natural, it's possible. You can do it. It's possible. Dude, stop. Lee Banks, please. I hope you do great at the Olympia, but stop with the all-natural stuff.
Well, there's a couple of things that come to mind for me, David. One, there's a difference between being natural and being clean, okay? I applaud it.
That's a perfect description.
Yeah, good for him. Great if that's what you want to do. I've also got news for you. You ain't the only one. I know personally 5 or 6 guys that are natural that compete in classic, and because they literally
had to lose muscle,
they can't take any stuff. Okay, it doesn't help them at this point. If you've got any kind of muscle, memory, if you've got any time in the gym in the trenches over the years, you've built the muscle. Okay. And you're right. I mean, per the height/weight restrictions, like I say, I know 5, 6, 7. It could even be more. That don't take anything. They just
had to lose muscle. Well, what are you going to do? Hey, if somebody goes to a pro bodybuilder and says, hey, guess what? For this new class, you got to lose 30 pounds of muscle. What are you going to do? Well, that's an easy answer.
Well, if you stay, anybody knows anything about bodybuilding and drugs, okay, knows that if you've taken stuff and or competed for over 10 years, okay, you cannot continue to take almost anything really and lose the muscle. It will absolutely retain that muscle. You have to do very little. You can curl 20-pound dumbbells, okay, and that muscle's going to stay. That's just the way it is. You took 15, 20 years to build it. It ain't going to just go away. This is why you see a lot of the old timers that still have fairly decent physiques.
Absolutely.
For their age, even though they're not anywhere near what they were back in their heyday, okay? Again, that's the whole muscle memory thing, and if you're in the gym 3, even 4 days a week, you can maintain that. So, but I get where you're coming from, but let's make that distinction out there, boys, okay? Listen, you may be natural now, but you weren't for 15 years, 20 years.
No, and that's what I'm saying is he's going out there and he's put, when he says like supernatural or it's possible, it's like, okay, I kind of sort of get where you're coming from, but let's not forget that the majority of the foundation of what you have is not from competing as a natural competitor. Like I said, if you want to take 5 years away from the stage and come up with paperwork, or 10 years and come back and say, but it's only been like a couple of years at the most. I know he was competing a few years ago as a bodybuilder and as a big bodybuilder. I think he was fifth in Chicago a few years ago. And so, like I said, I've had nothing but good relationships with Lee, and I wish him the best at the Olympia. But he's really just force feeding people this natural stuff, and it's becoming too much, and it's just really disingenuous, and I think he needs to stop.
Well, it's to me, it's more of a personal thing. I don't know why people have to put that out there. Like it's like the guys that wear the shirts that say, whatever, I'm 100% natural, And half the time, I think to myself, look, you don't really have to tell us, okay? We know. It's very obvious that nobody's questioning that you're natural, okay?
Yeah.
So,
anyhow, best of luck to Lee at the Olympia, and you know what? Whatever you have to do to achieve your best physique, go nuts. But until you step away and are all natural for maybe 5 or 10 years, stop with the supernatural claims, because you're.
Yeah, well. Listen,
I don't like it. That's my opinion. Like I said, I've seen other people express the same opinion. I'm certainly not the first one to voice that they feel this way.
Well, I would stay away from the words super and natural together. It's like jumbo shrimp to me. So it's
supernatural.
Yeah, come on, man.
Not just natural.
Speaking of supernatural, that'll bring us to this week's installment of Baywatch. And give us the update, David. We're getting edging ever closer.
Is my face looking any thinner?
No, but go ahead.
No. It should
you just haven't shaved today. You're not fooling me.
This Saturday will be 5 weeks out, so I feel pretty good with where I'm at. Getting into the rhythm as far as my carb cycling and stuff like that. Getting some good advices from certain people. So
always the right advice, my friend. Yeah.
I feel really good, and I don't like making excuses, and because I think. Usually excuses come from a place where, if you look back on what you did wrong, you probably could have worked harder or been smarter. And, I won't say that the travel that I was doing in 2014 and 2016 made it impossible for me to be in shape, because all I would, it's on me that I had to work harder, and I had to be better as far as planning my meals, planning my workouts, and planning that around the road. But it's definitely a little bit easier to focus on my prep, and a little bit easier to be where I need to be, not being on the road every weekend. And so I feel really good with where I'm at. And for 5 weeks out, I wake up looking pretty sharp. So
very good, sir. All right. Chances are you won't be sharing any secrets of peak week, will you?
It's peak week. I just posted that meme on my Instagram and on my Facebook. Peak week. I hear that.
By the way, we got some great response.
The thing is, the people who are using peak week are never the people like. Look, I get that bodybuilders are carb loading, carb depleting, doing things where technically peak week kind of makes sense. You're doing whatever you can to really enhance your physique that last week. Although most people screw it up.
Yep.
So it's usually I don't know what's the opposite of peaking. Fail week or
I got to come up with the opposite.
But usually the people that are talking about peak week are like, and I'm not trying to rag on bikini competitors, but the people that I see doing it are usually out of shape bikini competitors. We're like, it's peak week. And it's like, sweetheart, there is nothing that you can do in this last week that's going to get you ready for this show. So get a refund from your coach and focus on next year. So, but Yeah, I hate the term. I hate the term peak week, and like you had eloquently put on my Facebook page, this is a term that didn't even exist
No.
before social media existed.
First of all, they would have beat you up at the gym if you even said such a stupid thing out of your
Yeah.
mouth. Let me tell you
I got
something.
my
We
ass
didn't.
kicked again at Gold's Venice. What happened? I said peak week in the locker
Yeah,
room.
pretty much. I mean, they would have hung you up in the locker room to drive it. No, listen, it was never a term that was you. There's a lot of things. We'll have to come up with a future episode that just deals with things I hate. All right, sayings I hate. Nobody's going to war.
Can I have a couple drinks before we shoot this one?
Oh yeah. That would definitely enhance.
Things that we hate uncensored.
Uncensored, but yeah. Nobody's going to war. Okay, you're not.
Not doing battle.
No,
We're not
nobody's
going
doing
to
battle
war.
on stage.
You're not a soldier.
The closest you're getting to battle on stage is you're wearing.
You know what? You know what? One I don't like is when people say it took blood, sweat, and tears to get ready for a show. First off, if you're bleeding, you're doing something very, very wrong. Sweat, yes, and tears. I don't know that a lot of people are really crying that much when it comes to their contest prep.
Man,
you know, it's hard work, and I've been through contest preps that are very hard, and I think we've had this discussion before. You have to be willing to suffer. And when I use the word suffer, I like making it very clear that I'm talking bodybuilding and fitness industry suffer. Because when we talk about the word suffer and suffrage as a something that's all encompassing to humanity, anything that bodybuilders go through voluntarily to get ready for a show isn't suffering. But look, guys, I understand how hard people are working, and I understand that there's phrases and stuff like that. But let me tell you, if you're bleeding trying to get ready for a show, something's wrong. Really wrong.
And
maybe powerlifting meet.
Never forget, my friend, there is no crying in bodybuilding. Okay,
there's no crying. There's no crying in bodybuilding.
There's no crying in bodybuilding. Come on.
So, no more blood, sweat, and tears. How about just sweat, and sweat.
Listen.
Although Dorian had his pretty cool video, Blood and Guts, back in the day, which me and my brothers wore out on VHS.
Yeah, there's no. Listen, that was great stuff.
You don't get to compare Dorian to today's bikini competitor.
Let's not put him in that mix, but. There's a few pet peeves. Like I said, we'll make a future episode. We'll dedicate it to that. But I can't take the guys walking around with the gallon jugs of water. And now they've even got stuff you put on your jug.
Oh yeah. Fancy things that go onto your jug.
Sleeves of stuff.
I have a shaker that I bring around with me, and when I was younger, I carried a gallon jug because I thought that's how you got big in the gym, is carrying a gallon jug. But on one hand, it's like, it's not bothering me. Why should I care if somebody wants to carry a gallon jug? But on the other hand, you do look kind of stupid, and there's a water.
What's it for? Is it in case you get stranded out in the middle of nowhere? And I mean, where do you go?
Here's the thing, guy. If you're at a gym and it's busy and you're on your bench, there sometimes is anywhere between a 12 and a 54% chance that if you go up to go to the water fountain, or bubbler as we call it here in Wisconsin, which a lot of people don't know, somebody could steal your bench. So when you have that gallon jug, when you have that gallon jug, not only are you ensuring your hydration, but you're ensuring the security of the machine to which you have commandeered.
Right.
So
hey, then maybe we should invent some little thing that saves your bench or something, like a little thing you can put on there, like your picture.
There is. You leave your shaker cup on your bench in like maybe your wraps.
Put your gym bag there. Listen, put anything there.
My wraps, like if I have wrist wraps or like a belt or whatever, and I leave that on the bench with my shaker cup and I walk away, that is a clear sign that this is taken, and you're not allowed to use my shit, my stuff.
I'm adding that to my list, but. All right, listen, we got some shows coming up this week. You, my friend, are off to Baltimore.
Baltimore
Pro.
Our friend Boris, who, for the people who aren't familiar, Boris promoted the Russian Grand Prix back in the 90s and early 2000s. So he took some time off for promoting shows. He's back. So there's an IFBB show with men's physique and bikini, and an NPC show for the first time this year. But he's also got strongman. He's got powerlifting. So it's kind of like, he's trying to work his way into like a little fitness weekend. So I'm really excited to go out there. Boris is a cool guy. Fun to talk. We talk about this. He's fun. Boris sounds like on the phone like one of the bad guys from a Bond movie.
Oh yeah.
Yes, David. This is Boris. We need to talk about him seeing the show. And I'm like, he's a super nice guy. He's a super cool guy. And but when you talk to him on the show, you're like, this is some like.
Yeah, there's
James
not a lot of inflection in voice. It's very even keel. It's very Russian. Not that he talks.
He's
Not that
trip.
he talks very fast, but it's very Russian.
I'm excited to go out there, and you are headed.
I am going to the Branch Warren.
All right.
I don't even know what it's called. Fitness Expo. I mean, let me tell you, him and Trish have done a great job. Now he's had this show. This is his longest running show. He's got 5 or 6 shows now. Another one in Texas actually in about 2 weeks, and he's got a few others. One he does with Chris Giovanni out in Milwaukee. Okay. I think you're out in your neck of the woods, isn't it?
It's in over in Minnesota.
Close enough.
So,
and he's got a few others, but this
it's all the same.
It's all the same stuff for
Minnesota.
Me. So this is the longest running one he's had, though, and let me tell you, it's a full expo. I mean, he's got everything, just pretty much everything you just mentioned: strongman, arm wrestling. Also, the crown jewel of the weekend, he's got the midget wrestlers there with the whole ring and everything set up. So
the crown jewel of the entire weekend.
It's absolutely hilarious, but it's this whole team of them. There's got to be probably 12 of them, and they come out and they do, of course, all the the regular wrestling stuff, but they got all the shtick going and all that stuff, and if you got a minute or two to spare, and as long as they keep it short, I'm always in for watching.
I was waiting for you to come with some sort of.
There me, Rob.
I knew it was going to happen.
Love these guys. I love them, but it's a big
production.
It's a big NPC show, though. He's going to have. I mean, now Texas are big shows as it is, but he's got. I just talked to Branch the other day. They had almost 400 before late entries and all that stuff and day of. So it's going to be a blockbuster show. But
I have fun. I'm seeing that one. Those are a lot of time on feet.
I got to figure out a way for. I'm going to work on some stuff, especially as you're coming into your own here with your own. We got to get a way to get paid by the word or something, or by
the word.
Yeah.
How about just like this many competitors is going to cost you this much?
That's what I'm telling you.
This much.
Thinking about bumping this stuff up, man. Well, listen. Let's call it what it is, okay? If I do a show with 150 competitors, why should that cost the same as a show with 600 competitors? And in fact, I'm doing 3 times the work.
Yeah, no, it's just when people talk about that, it would just be like saying, this is what I get paid hourly. And generally speaking, if you have 100 competitors, it's going to take 1 hour. In any other field, you wouldn't expect to get paid for 1 hour the same as you would for 4 hours. So number of competitors. Me at this point, look, if a promoter is going to put their trust in me to fly me out, put me up in a hotel, and to host their event that they're putting the hard work into, I take it as a huge compliment to me, and personal opportunities and business opportunities. So I'm going for it. So I'm not going to be too nitpicky right now.
Listen,
but when you're on stage for standing for 6-7 hours at the same spot without being able to go to the bathroom or have anything to eat or whatever, it gets to be a little bit long.
2 words for you, my friend, for this weekend: Russian vodka.
Right. Should bring some for Boris.
I would. I think it's a nice gesture. It's yeah.
I'll have to stop and pick some up. So
I'm sure he'll love it. Yeah. But well, listen. Good luck in I was going to say in Russia.
In Russia. I don't have to go to Russia.
Yeah, you're not going all the way to Russia. It's actually Baltimore, which is close to Russia, but you can see Russia from there.
You can see Russia from Baltimore.
Oh yeah. But good luck at the Baltimore Pro, David. I'm sure you'll have a report on that when we get back. And we got to get some funkier stuff on Baywatch too. We need some pics. We got to get some pics uploaded to the site.
I'd post a few. Part of my contract with Muscle Sport is I'm posting pictures on my Instagram and stuff. So I got like a little filtered ab shot kind of ad I posted tonight. So like a little teaser. I tell you what, I'm not much for progress pictures, and I never have been. A, because I'm super critical of myself. 2, because I'm super critical of myself, and D, I've seen enough guys post progress pictures where everybody's like, oh, you look great, and then the day of the show you screw the pooch, which I've done more times than I care to recall, and then everybody's just like, well, what happened? And for me, I know people like progress pictures, and I know especially now with social media, people really like to see progress, but for me it's more always just been like, my progress pictures really don't count for anything because everything is 100% on the day of the show. And so I've just never really been much for progress pictures, but more so just because I'm super critical of myself, and I'm like,
And
So,
supernatural.
but if Bob says I need to post some Baywatch pictures, then maybe we can
Yeah,
accommodate.
we'll come up with it. We can't give away too much, but we'll put something out there for the fans.
We'll just go by my face. Like it's looking a little bit. I'm looking a little bit leaner.
There you go.
Maybe.
We'll just do pictures of your face from now until the show.
Like how much uglier I get in the next 5 weeks will determine whether I'm in shape or not.
All right, David. Well, that's going to wrap things up for this week. We will be back next week with another installment of The Last Rep. For David Bay, I'm Bob Chick. We're out.